We're speeding towards a Galaxy S9 announcement. Official press invites are in our hot little hands. At the same time, might Samsung face some unexpected competition from LG in the first half of the year? We're finally getting more word on the red Hydrogen 1 smartphone. And at the same time, we're also saying goodbye to a handful of tech companies early in the year. But we've got a lot to talk about, so make sure you're charged and ready for episode 289 of the Pocketnow Weekly. Recorded January 26th at noon Pacific, this weekly podcast is where we dissect and discuss those gadgets that make our lives mobile, smartphones, tablets, and wearables. It's all the stuff you wish existed when you were a kid, and a red Hydrogen sounds like it would have been the perfect Russian nemesis to Dr. Manhattan. I'm Juan Carlos Bagnell, senior editor at Pocketnow.com, joined as always by plucky podcast producer Mr. Jules Wong on the East Coast. How's it going, sir?
Well, I mean, it's the Russian A-bomb, really. Like, when you go all the way back into the 50s, it's just that threat that seems looming overhead, and it's just nuclear warfare.
That's right, which is the perfect, and we have the perfect solution with the Uberman, Dr. Manhattan in blue, to carry on truth, justice, and the American way as we deconstruct our superhero myths. But that's not what red is going for. I mean, their phone. I think they're going for something different.
Going to save us apparently with holograms and whatnot.
Right. Well, and with Gem in the holograms, and that's how we're gonna save ourselves. Just,
Tegan and Sarah is always going to be a great alternative to that. Yeah, indeed.
This is not. I think we should stop before we really go down that rabbit hole. Welcome back to another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly. We've got some really cool stories on tap for you today. Some really hot news coming down the pipe, and some stuff that I think you're going to be very interested in hearing. Jules, I just want to start off, man. How was your week? I feel like
it was great up until yesterday when I was trying to catch a train and I was at the cafe and I was just hanging out, and compared to the 10-degree days that we've been having recently, it was 20 degrees yesterday.
Ooh, balmy.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. So I made the mistake of taking off my little vest jacket thing. Apparently a lot of stuff drops out of it, and one of the things that I was carrying in my jacket was my Pixel 2.
Oh.
And that's and I had to rush to catch the train, and I found myself going without it. Fortunately, though, I was able to call the cafe, and they have the Pixel 2 for me. So as long as I can get there at some point this weekend during the morning, which will be hard because in this out of the way place that is really hard to get to, unless you're doing it by train or take an hour-long bus ride. So this will be interesting, and they're only open during the morning and earlier, like lunch. I don't really.
But I mean, like, in the most hipstery way possible. Like, we're only open on Wednesdays from 3 a.m. till 7 a.m. I guess the nice thing is, though, that someone did find it and they did the right thing as good Samaritans and just holding it for you. So that's kind of nice, though.
The poor lady was like, I called up the cafe and like she was like, I'm sorry, I have to bust this other customer. Here's your chocolate croissant, and okay, so let me just put down this stick-it note. Jules, was it Jules? And here's your phone number. Okay, that's great. Well, I'm gonna give away some cakes now. Bye.
But again, for however brusque she might have been, I'm just glad to hear that the phone was at least found. I know, like, my wife had a phone stolen because she set it down for a second at a Costco, and like someone just yanked it, and like it took her a full minute to kind of realize, like, oh, I had just set my phone down on this pile of jeans, and now my phone is completely gone.
You know what's ridiculous? I was actually using my new EV, which apparently they're promoting me to say stuff. No, they're not. But like I was it has the stylus, and I was using it in my friend's car. We were doing a little driving, and I dropped it. It was in the car, but it took about an hour for us to find the damn stylus because one, the car was messed up to all oblivion, and two, there are just too many nooks and crannies, and we spent
Oh
too
yeah.
much time looking at the same ones because futility is kind of the horrible thing about humans trying to find things in closed
But you know
quarters.
what's not futile? The march of technological progress in the mobile arena is we're going to get
And we
excited
want
about.
you to be a part of it. Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. And you can do so on Twitter. You can join the conversation as we always have the conversation up. It's on Twitter, hashtag PN Weekly. Send in your tweets through that. And we'll be able to respond to them, to mention them. By the way, if you want to do it via email, this would have been the end of the month mailbag episode, but apparently there's not much activity going on. Keep it up though. We want you to send your emails into podcast@pocketnow.com, and we will continue addressing you through those mediums as well.
Definitely. All right, man. You've got the top news stories for the week. Why don't we jump in there? Because I think we're finally
I
getting
mean,
some
it could be the
answers on
bottom
some
news stories
exciting.
of the week. It could be like the least interesting stories of the week, and
It
you
could
wouldn't
be that is factually correct, and yet it is absolutely wrong because these are the most exciting stories of the week,
the
hands down.
most exciting. All right, well,
Objectively speaking,
That
that
I'll believe
is
you for
the
one
truth
whole
of.
second. For the week of January 22nd, 2018, this is all the news that is fit to podcast. Saying the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus on February 25, likely in Barcelona prior to MWC 2018. Plenty of renders have appeared to show the device changing little in design from the S8. We'll talk about that in 2 minutes. The LG G7, meanwhile, may not launch at MWC, but it is on schedule. That coming from the company's PR to Engadget, refuting rumors that the electronics division vice president had ordered the reset of the design process for the springtime flagship. 3 iPhones are coming to us in 2018, if supply chain analysts are to be believed. 2 will start above $1,000, apparently, and the mid-range device, apparently, which will have an aluminum body instead of more durable stainless steel, and an LCD instead of a more vibrant OLED display, will cost somewhere between $700 and $800. For reference, the same model, the iPhone 8 equivalent, $699 this year. Cinema camera maker Red is teasing teasing its company's first phone. The founder is actually. The Hydrogen 1 pre-orders went up in July just below $1,200. It will have all the big specs of 2017, including a Snapdragon 835. That means we're following up on that with Qualcomm as we speak. We also see a 4,500 milliamp hour battery, and it will need to be that big in order to supply power to the hologram generators, or the holograph generators, excuse me. India will see on February 1st the new and improved Moto X4. The device, which launched in November, is getting a big upgrade, and the big spec line from that is 6 gigabytes of RAM and Qualcomm Snapdragon 636, the first in the lower tier of the 600 series to feature the Cryo cores, which is a modified ARM make. In terms of Google I/O happening, that has been announced. May 8 to 10. Few puzzles have been released over the course of years from Google in terms of its big software developer conference, but apparently this one's just a little more straightforward. Tickets upcoming, of course. We're talking about Title II, net neutrality, and what it means for AT&T. Apparently, it wants to have some regulatory certainty and is vouching for an Internet Bill of Rights. And it says that it is willing to work with consumer groups as well as legislators on this of a bill. But in terms of that, it's still up to the FCC on how it wants to enforce the internet. And so far, the repeal of Title II protections is the law of the land for now. And finally, we have something a little bit funny. It's a little bit of pride for the company called Integral Memory. It's from the UK, and it has claimed the first 512 gigabyte SD card, taking the 400 gigabyte card from SanDisk, which was released sometime mid last year, and just rubbing it in their faces and just kicking dust. They were pretty grandiose in the press release, and if I can pull it up, I want to be able to quote it. But I mean, we're just getting up there. I do remember them mentioning that external memory is more important on mobile now more than ever, and yeah, it's just they're just having fun with it.
Well, again, don't you think it's so funny when we were starting to get into 128 gigabyte cards, and the theoretical maximum was something like multiple terabytes of storage.
2 terabytes. That's the big thing that
It
was
supports 2 terabytes of expanded, but like we'll never see that in a micro SD. And now like we're actually a quarter of the way there, which is crazy.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So sneeze and lose a laptop's worth of storage.
I mean, well, it depends because what was it? The 400 gigabyte card was $250. So we don't know where this will launch just yet. It's going to be out next month. Here's the quote here. Europe-wide memory specialist Integral Memory PLC has beaten all competitors and entered a growing need for increased capacity on mobile devices. So loud and proud, just going at it.
Definitely. We already got to have a few tweets coming in here from the PN Weekly hashtag from Renato Laporte. Even though phones have software locks to prevent people from using a stolen phone, at least in Europe, the market for robbed phones for OEM parts is huge. So you were very lucky indeed, Jules. You were very lucky indeed.
Indeed?
Indeed.
All right. Where's the deed? I would like to have that. Maybe it's the warranty for the Pixel 2.
No. Indeed is it's a word.
Extended warranty. The Google device protection.
Extended warranty deed. Is that what you think Indeed stands for?
Yeah, indeed. They're like it's a combined word, but like it was a conjugation.
I don't think so. No. So 512 gigabytes of storage. That sounds fun. We should probably try and unpack some of this AT&T stuff with their internet bill of rights.
You want to unpack that instead of the S9?
Oh, I want to kind of build back to the S9.
You want to build
that's going to be the more fun conversation. So let's save that for the more fun part of this podcast.
I mean, they're just asking for legislation, and between now and then, they get to jockey their position around, and hopefully that is going to be the case where consumer groups might be able to eke out something, and senators and representatives are actually going to listen to the other side. And we've already seen that in terms of bills overturning the repeal of the FCC's decision to repeal Title II protections. That has been said, it's been a glowing kind of a little bell for those Democratic senators who are aching for win in any form here in Congress, but face challenges from it's a Senate bill, so they're going to face challenges from the House as well as Donald.
I mean, I think one of the reasons why some of us are so cynical about this move from the AT&T CEO is they're suddenly asking for rules to kind of be locked into place now with an FCC that has already demonstrated that it has no interest in being a regulatory agency for those types of companies or working in a way that might actually regulate those kinds of companies. So it feels a little disingenuous. Like, well, now that we've got an FCC chairman who's all about, gutting net neutrality, now's the right time to make sure that the Senate and the Congress are getting on top of those rules and sort of cementing them in stone, making them harder to alter. Before the 2018 midterms, where historically the party in power has difficulty holding on to the House and the Senate.
Well, I mean, I would assume that this would be a years-long process, given the span of the internet and the interest inherent in that. So this is not really. I don't see this as a issue of trying to get things in before the bell. as much as it is Ma Bell trying to, ring the bell on something else. And
I think we've used Bell too many times. I don't know. I'll be curious to see how this flies in the face of initiatives at the state and local level. Where several states are already trying to enact their own variants. I think Pennsylvania already got something on the books that they're trying to enact basic consumer protections that align with net neutrality policy. It could be really
people
interesting to
want
see.
something now. People want immediacy, especially after that vote, because it just feels so fresh and it feels so much more painful, especially as you go deeper into the threads on Reddit.
Well, again, I mean, that's not to say that there isn't like that libertarian subculture on Reddit, which is very much against net neutrality. But I think one of the things that's getting a little obnoxious in all political debates, we could be talking about net neutrality, we could be talking about healthcare, for example, we could be talking about tax reform, where every presidential administration comes in, and I mean, from the George W. Bush days to now, it's whatever president's in power. Now we just have sort of a flip flop with one party trying to, govern, rule, or write legislation all on their own, which means every 4 years we get a pendulum swing in the exact opposite direction, where we never really build towards really fixing these problems. We just get this like flip flop back and forth. More stability in any given market is going to be better for that market. But this is also where I feel that fight for net neutrality is so precious, because it took us over a decade to get to some basic consumer protection handled by a woefully underfunded and understaffed regulatory agency, just pulling the rug out from under that and then going back to something that really wasn't working for most consumers before then doesn't sound like the right way.
Well, yeah, and to that, it's always fun to see with these political upswings and downswings that when you realize that your neighbor might be voting the opposite way that you are, you're still neighbors and you still have to live with that, unless you're able to somehow magically just move away, and that's not easy at all. So
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
especially in a climate
we
where
have to live with rules. We have to live with the right rules.
well, but that's just it. Is like I don't feel like we necessarily exist right now in a political climate where a majority of the people who have been elected into office have any desire to actually govern or lead or work to try and arrange an equitable outcome. You know what I mean? Like that's we're not sort of in politics. We're just sort of in obstructionist policy right now, which isn't necessarily the best look for the United States. But let's move on to something that's way more interesting. We've already been getting a number of tweets about the red hydrogen one. Finally have some real data on that thing, some real specs, something to actually look forward to when this phone release.
Yeah, so just more into the numbers. The 835X, again, we're trying to suss that out. 4500 milliamp hour battery, dual SIM slots, headphone jacks, quad HD display for 2D viewing, and better than 3D images in 4V holographic mode. Lots of mumbo jumbo going on there. Carrier support is unprecedented. I'm not sure if they'll get carriers, but it just seems like Jim Gennard is really hyped up, and he has the right to be. So
now this starts off another discussion where I feel we left off 2017, kind of like those of us in the tech space, not necessarily reflected by general consumers, but those of us in the tech space getting more excited about the prospect of more specialist phones. The Note making a tremendous return to the market, the V30 for content creation, the BlackBerry Key 1 as a productivity, as another example of a different type of productivity, or even down to the Razer phone. Some stumbling there with Razer's marketing on this is not a gaming phone, it's a phone for gamers. Who like to play games. But that type of approach to not trying to appeal to a general consumer demographic. Red has, I don't think they have any illusions or any pretense that they're going up against the iPhone, right? They don't seem to be interested in the slightest about going up against the Galaxy S9. This is a completely different conversation on mobility and productivity and being a complement to someone's workflow in a very specific way.
Well, it's only one form of productivity, and that's if you're working in high grade media. We've seen the drawings, the patents, and all that. None of that has been fleshed out in what Denard just said in his little, happy pants post. But there's just, that's only one form of productivity that will be supported. It's been the most obvious choice when it comes to the smartphone industry. We've seen how smartphone cameras have turned around and produced great films and shot on iPhone and all that kind of branding and marketing around that. And it seems like now it's just hyper pegging the smartphone camera niche into this one.
Well, but isn't that one of the things that that they might potentially be trying to address is we have another manufacturer that seems interested, not necessarily positioning the entire aesthetic or the idea of the phone on this idea, but they seem interested in rejoining the conversation on modular design. And if you've ever worked with a Red camera, those things are just a scattering of transformer parts that you cobble together exactly the rig that you're trying to achieve. Do we think that that might be another vote of confidence in a notion of trying to find ways of tailor fitting? Because I was very specific in the words that I chose. One specific example of productivity that Red is looking to be a companion device to a very particular kind of lifestyle. And now with a more modular design, or the potential for a more modular design, does that mean that we might be able to rejoin a conversation even for consumers? That your phone is not the perfect phone for you. Here are companies that can help you make the perfect phone for you.
This would have been a great ground floor idea. This would have been great 10 years ago. I don't see it.
I mean, it would have been, but also like the tech 10 years ago sucked for this.
You had that little, neato hinge that the T-Mobile G1 had.
Right.
Nice.
Right, but I mean, we were just getting out of what, like 600 megahertz X scale ARM processors, like the ability that we would have also been able to create sophisticated enough software for mobile devices to have like built-in driver support for different pieces of hardware is
that's fair. That's fair. But again, there should have been something. There should have been this huge bulky mess that would have been impressive at CES 2008, and then this would have built into a more refined thing. The smartphone craze died down from all the trade shows that we participate in. So.
Well, but that's also part of it too, is like not the expectation that this thing's going to outsell the iPhone. I think the victory of Apple and Samsung right now is being very good, or I mean, from being good enough to very good in just about everything they do, but they're not necessarily tailor fit to the individual user. We have a couple tweets here using the PN Weekly hashtag from Andrew Sislak. I would love to have a Red phone for the camera and add-on capabilities, but don't want to pay the price tag associated with the R&D and production of the holographic display. I'm sorry, Andrew, those kind of go hand in hand, man. Like I want amazing new technology, but I don't want to pay for it. That if this is, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Jules.
Oh no, I was just only going to say what Apple CEO Tim Cook said, which is it's a value price that you get inside, and that innovation costs what innovation costs.
Yeah, I was going to say, if this is an idea that takes off, if this is something that general consumers start to find desirable, then probably around the 5-year mark after Red launches it, then you'll see it showing up in less expensive consumer devices. But it's just like any other industry. If you want to be at the bleeding edge, there's a cost associated with being on the bleeding edge. And this is also one of the things that gets a little frustrating for me personally in talking about tech is some new exciting idea will come out and then it'll get sort of hammered. Like, oh, it's too expensive, or oh, it's not mature enough, or oh, it's not working right. And then we never really see the follow-up to that because it sort of died a million echo chamber cranky comment deaths on the internet. And this is why we get stuck in a holding pattern, or why tech starts to feel a little bit stale. From Peter Hayton using a hashtag PN Weekly, whilst I love the idea of niche phones like Razer and Red, do you think they will really work as a major investment, especially if they are not good with support and updates? I feel to be truly modular, we need a clear commitment to software to make it worthwhile.
Software is a part, is like it's a component to it, and I think people have a hard time of being able to visualize that as a part of it that you can just click on and off or whatever. Because in addition, well, if you're talking about software in terms of features, like there are so many features that you can add on and take off, but in terms of the base software, in terms of OS, that's harder to define for most people, and I guess the company could get away or could not cognize that that's something that needs to be prioritized. I don't know.
I wonder though if the conversation is properly targeted at the right demographic, what those concerns will actually what concerns will actually materialize. If the design of a red phone is to somehow try and pivot mass market, I mean, we can we they didn't quite make the news roundup this week, but look at a company like OnePlus who is yet again having problems with the credit card theft, the hack on their system, and that there's also anecdotal evidence to support that there might be another service on that phone that's trafficking user data to a cloud account in China again. Um, they are trying to pivot to being a general consumer brand out of just being an Android enthusiast brand. That's a really tough pivot. Now, with Red or with Razer focusing so specifically on very small demographics, it means those products are going to be more expensive. You know, when you R&D and you machine and you build these devices, you can't exercise the same sort of market forces to bring costs in lower. But if their demographic cares about the right companion device for a red camera and a red phone is the right companion device to that, then I think the discussion on software support takes on a very different look than what consumers are apt to expect, you know, just for like Android updates or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing that we can expect from Apple is reliable and ongoing software updates. And one of three things that we can expect this year is an iPhone that is kind of like an iPhone 8. Might be in another world, it could be an iPhone 9, we'd call it, instead of like so we have this like regular iPhone, we have like the sequels to the X, and there's going to be a plus version too. And we can assume that those cost $1,000 plus. Here with the mid-ranger, I'm wondering what the heck this is good, because this is KGI. This is KGI Securities Apple analyst Ming-Chi Kuo. A lot of people vaunt him as a reliable source, as a reliable foreteller of these things. And
Yeah.
in reality, his track record is more like 60-70%, which is better than
I mean, it's better than just guessing.
Yeah. But I mean, I mentioned earlier that we saw the iPhone 8 at $700 starting price.
Mhm.
Is Apple really going, like, is this innovation? Is this scaling down parts or innovative designs or whatever the heck? Is that innovation in itself worth paying for?
Well,
Especially considering that, given, the scale, price competitiveness is not
I think Apple
warranted here.
sends price competitiveness. I think if you're in the iOS ecosystem, you aren't comparative shopping iPhone to Android. I think they have a tremendously entrenched user base that is only going to really be interested in price comparing iPhone to iPhone. That's also why I think the iPhone 10 is doing as poorly as it is right now. I don't think the $1,000 price tag is what's holding it back. More that there are 8 iPhones that people can currently shop, which offer very granular differences between the various lines of iPhone. And I think that's actually taking a bigger chunk out of the iPhone 10 market share than any potential competition from outside of the Apple ecosystem. And so I think
don't
it's
know
what's
how
kind of interesting to
Go ahead.
piggyback on the story. We've been seeing a number of editorials and vlogs and news posts about the death of the iPhone 10. And really, to me, I think this is just going to be, can Apple get back on top of a branding exercise that makes sense? You know, the iPhone 10 might end up just being an Apple Watch edition, right? You know, a singular one-off phone that was produced. They'll claim it was a singular one-off phone that was produced for the 10th anniversary of the iPhone. And moving forward, this is the tech that we're really going to be focused on for our you know, like our general consumer releases, and that'll help clean up the lines on, you know, having an iPhone SE 6S, 7, 8, and 10 all at the same time. But that still, it's just a branding exercise. Like, I do not understand. I kind of went off. I did the Jason T. Lewis. He does Painfully Honest Tech. I did his podcast, and I kind of went off on, I'm getting real tired of people who care that much about what the name of the phone is. You know, like, well, the iPhone 8's not really an iPhone 8. It's really an iPhone 7S. And you're like, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
Well,
The way that Apple's lines are going right now, they need a reset. The number letter combination that fell apart when the iPhone 6S design carried over into the iPhone 7. Their entire TikTok strategy.
This is the great thing about Apple, is because, you know, they are the largest company in the world, and thus they have the most freedom of narrative here. They get to decide their destiny.
They get to create their own reality. Definitely.
So I mean, what is a computer? Hello.
Right.
If you haven't seen the ad, don't see the ad for the iPad Pro. And if you want to talk about, just, you know, if they want to be able to you know, lead the market in that way, I mean, I still think that there is going to be up to a point where people are just like, all right, really, this is where we're going here. And I have reached it yet, but there has to be that point. And I think Apple at this point is on a rate to surpass the acceptable limit of that.
I'll be curious to see where the limit might be. I think some people have reached the limit, and you'll see a lot of people. I was on set with one of the cameramen. Newegg now still has an iPhone 5, not even an iPhone 5S. Like,
Oof.
he loves his phone. That is his phone. He might consider swapping over to an iPhone SE if and when that phone completely is non-functional. But he has no designs anytime. Like, it does everything he needs to get done. And I think Apple, this is why the Apple slowdown throttling story was such a bad look for Apple. Was there are a lot of people that hold onto their iPhones for a really long time and haven't been inspired by newer products that Apple's been putting out. We have a couple tweets here on the iPhone. This is from Andre Thicklore Swift. PN Weekly holding out for iPhone SE2. The iPhone 10 is an overreach in pricing. I you know, again, the market will bear whatever the market will bear, but I am totally with you. I would love to see the iPhone SE continue on as their entry level experiment. You know, generational chipset, keep the iPhone 5 form factor and just keep refreshing the guts, and you'll have your world phone entry level solution, emerging LTE market solution that would make me so happy. I love that. I
It'd
love
be
that
great to
design.
have that for us. I mean, in terms of the other markets, the current existing iPhone SE is pretty much the only option they have, and that is affordable, and that is from Apple. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that it's a great phone. I mean, it's still, I think, one of the best implementations of software and hardware synergy. I said
swordware.
swordware. I just Tom Brokaw the heck out of that. And this is from Peter Hayton. PN Weekly, I agree 100% with your point on the iPhone 10. What they really need to do is streamline and get back to the consistent, obvious purchasing decision for those who want a new iPhone each year. I think if you simplify the lines, and you're more readily willing to axe the older version, or make it, you know, sort of the under the radar free on contract solution for someone who wants to shop an iPhone, but you're not putting it up front and center. Just getting back to a simple iPhone landing page on apple.com, I think would be a huge benefit for Apple in terms of marketing right now.
I think what Apple fails to realize is that once a product goes a year out, I mean, the third party, eBay, Swappa, all those markets can have their way. It doesn't really matter that you have that $100 discount. It opens up the room to more depreciation and whatnot. So,
Oh, it totally does. That's a great point.
and they don't have to do that anymore. They don't, and with the rumors about the iPhone 10 going away without that discount, without that peg, I think they would have more room, more authority in terms of being able to say that this iPhone is this price, period. So
Yeah, I kind of feel like Apple and Google are sort of guilty of this market overcorrection, overreaction. There was a story that came out. One of a former Google engineer talking about just the culture at Google right now isn't super great. But it's his account reads like sour grapes. But you look at some of their more recent business decisions, their problems with messaging platforms, what they're trying to do in terms of building their own hardware, but then also having difficulties in keeping features on things like the Google Home Mini. And there's a lot of it feels like there's some truth in what this engineer was talking about, that Google just seems to be reacting to whatever is popular as opposed to trying to have a coordinated vision for the entire health of the company to lead the discussion in the markets that they're in.
Are you talking about
Apple with
Steve
the
Yeager?
iPhone? Yeah, exactly. Apple with the iPhone feels very similar right now. What is the market leaning towards? We're going to be late to the market with the solution. We're still going to claim that we're somehow driving the innovation or driving the discussion, but we've all sort of arrived at the same idea and the same outcome for what a smartphone should resemble in 2017. And that's a tough place for a company that is also so successful at creating a lifestyle image behind their brand. You need to have some kind of excitement or some kind of buzz or some kind of exclusivity to drive the desirability of your product. And if
Well,
people think, well, this phone is gonna go away in a year, you won't be able to buy it, and something new will come, and that's exciting too. But you go back and you're like, well, I can go all the way back to the iPhone SE, which is a refresh of the iPhone 5S in Apple's stable right now. That doesn't make iPhones feel exclusive or desirable.
what was Pontiac's slogan back in the early 90s? We drive excitement.
I was gonna say, was it E Ahula Ula? I don't
Uh,
remember.
no. Well, in any case, define the word schedule for me. Speaking
Define the
of
word schedule.
schedule, yeah, yes. Speaking of authority and narrative and this destiny.
Okay. Because I think you're leading me towards wanting to talk about LG as a
Oh yeah, totally.
but
Yeah, this is what they're
according
saying.
to Webster's dictionary, schedule is a plan for carrying out a process or procedure, giving lists of intended events and times. So that's what
So
a schedule is.
plan intentions. Okay. The LG has not made their plans nor their intentions about the G7 exactly public up
Nope.
until this point. And that's where I'll give LG most of, I guess, the credit here in terms of saying that, in terms of the reports that it's whoever it is, I can't think of his name, but he said, all right, let's do a reset of the G7 design process and going against traditions here. All right, so here's
Mhm.
the statement from the company to Engadget in full. Some stories have reported that LG's mobile division is delaying the release of the G7 in order to re-evaluate its performance and design. This is inaccurate. Launch of the G6's successor are on schedule. LG intends to focus on creating products that will result in meaningful results rather than launching new products on a schedule based solely on industry expectations and traditions. The release date for G7 is currently under consideration and will be announced when the time is right. So, schedule, release date under consideration, which means that there's a part of the schedule that is indeterminate and therefore on schedule is kind of implied here. But also the fact that industry expectations on when to, like, I can get that, but traditions for the past the G6 and G5 were launched at MWC. And I pointed out that the G4 was launched in late April, the G3 in late May, and the G2 was all the way back in August. So
Mhm.
it doesn't really like line up with the Galaxy S releases too. So to that, they do have a point in terms of, hey, we're trying to match the competition here, and we're trying to do this and that. And while I do believe that having the headspace, the room to navigate and to express themselves is important in terms of marketing, they've used that very poorly. They've been throwing money in the marketing machine and have come up with basically nothing. And they've tried to defray those costs year after year after year. So what they want to do is design their marketing better and find ways to evaluate the performance of those
To
ads.
me, definitely sounds like damage control on just them trying to address the market to say there will be another smartphone from LG. I don't think that this really dissuades me from some of the hypotheses that we had been working with before, that this could be a later release. This could be some merging between the V and G series brands. They could be coming up with a whole new name. So when they say the release date for G7 is currently under consideration, it doesn't necessarily mean we're getting a G7. It could mean we're getting the Icon or the Iconic or whatever buzzwordy name that they decide to try and relabel and rebrand with. If that's the path that they head down, it just sounds like
I
they
mean, they
haven't
could do that, but
finalized
what LG
their
has
plans for
told us,
that.
yeah, but what LG has told us in prior years is that they play their cards pretty with an open hand, and they
They do.
really pre-announced to us that this is the way things are going to be, that this is the name of the device, and that this will have certain features, and that's pretty much it. So
I mean, so you're absolutely correct that that's what they've done in the past, and everything we've seen might mean. Again, this is complete speculation, and we have no official word from any of our LG contacts on what's happening here. But this, to me, also means that they could be reevaluating just even how they announce and name their products. I do not think it's likely that we're going to see the same GV launch that we've seen in years past. I think we're probably going to see some slightly more coordinated effort at getting LG streamlined and offering a big little smartphone release that's closer to what we would get from a Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus.
mm, uh because they went a little bit crazy with the diminutive stuff, the Q6 and the LG G6
Mhm.
Plus, and they've played around with
Well,
that.
they've been really
Um,
successful at the entry in the mid range. I mean, you see the LG, what is it, the LG Stylo quite a bit out in real life. Like
yeah,
I see that.
that does get a lot of spread.
So I can totally appreciate where this is the same problem I think like Microsoft and Nokia had. What was the most successful selling phone? Oh, it was the Lumia 500. Well, let's make a whole ton of devices in the 5, 6, and 700 series. We need a new flagship? Nah, we'll wait 3 years on that. So when you see all these like LGKs and LGQs and these various like sort of permutations of the entry and mid-level, like that makes sense to me from a corporate standpoint. It bugs the crap out of me as a consumer because I would like to see them streamline this process. I think most companies in this space, especially ones struggling with branding, would do better to streamline and focus on each tier with a very specific product to address that tier. When it comes to the flagship and the high end, because they've just been getting roasted in the market lately, I really do hope that what we see is combining their top end products into one line of phones and use that to come right out swinging against the next gen of iPhones. Now, from our last story, now is the right time to try and take a stab at Apple's market, with Apple also potentially going through some similar kind of market correction for the number of iPhones that they carry.
Well, didn't LG try that with its X series? I mean, they had like the dual camera
Mhm.
version, or like they had like little niche things that they targeted with each device. And what ended up happening was that very few or none of the carriers, the prepaid carriers, wanted that
Mhm.
and just said, "Hey, give me some of your regular stuff, or at least the closest to the regular stuff as you can offer us as possible." So,
Yeah. Well, and I think
yeah,
that's we're gonna see more of that. Who was the MVNO? Was it Virgin that they went iPhone only?
yep, Virgin Mobile.
Yeah. So I mean, that makes sense to me. They don't want to stock a whole bunch of parts, especially if they've got devices which are underperforming or they can't sell or they can't move off store shelves. I think for a lot of manufacturers who aren't Samsung and Apple, getting after direct sales, unlock sales, and improving your own brand reputation on the ground floor is going to be key over the next couple of years if we're going to keep pretending that smartphones are a competitive and dynamic market space. If you can't build the relationship directly, no carrier is going to extend a ton of support and a ton of marketing and a ton of ad dollars to help your brand up when they don't have to do that to sell an iPhone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's iPhone against LG, and we're talking about fifth largest brand versus largest brand by far.
Is LG what I mean, have you looked up the stats recently? I didn't even think LG was in top 5 worldwide anymore.
Because I always keep thinking about the US stats, and they're always somewhere like
right. I think they are top 5 in the US, and they might even be third place in the US right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think worldwide they're getting just eaten alive by Chinese manufacturers.
Yeah, it's Huawei, Oppo, and Vivo that are third, fourth, and
that's right. It was Vivo. Vivo is taking that 5th place spot, which again, that's a terrible look for a company that puts out hardware as nice as LG.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've been dancing around the number 2 position here, so you want to get into that?
Well, we should move right on up the food chain. Galaxy S9, invites in our hands. They're talking about the new phone, the camera reimagined. What are your expectations? Do you think we're going to see something phenomenally different than the S8?
Variable aperture is going to be on a wider scale, if rumors are to be believed. So that's a good thing. That's you've been focused on like very paper thin focus ranges before, and now we're able to control that and adjust the light. Hopefully, the ISO cell is going to be large. It's going to have enough sensing capacity to put in as much light into those deep trench isolation great things.
Now you're just throwing around buzzwords.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, that was basically the buzzwords that we got from the site. It's like dual pixels, super PD, autofocus, 3-stick FRS, high speed video, 480 FPS, full HD, and all this stuff here. And what you want to be able to produce results. You want to be able to have the best light, or as much light as possible, to work with within a reasonable size, because apparently I'm not sure if this is like the slim part, because they've been doing weird things with their isocell sensor branding.
Yeah. I really think they're going to move down in sensor size. I really think that they're probably looking at getting closer to that 1/3 of an inch sensor size.
Think so?
Well, the recent patents. I mean, you were talking about the slim size. That's the recent patent that they put out on the 2 newest isocell camera sensors.
Trying to get back.
Samsung makes great camera sensors. I mean, even going back to my interchangeable lens cameras, Samsung has tremendous expertise there. But with the variable aperture, you have to have a lot of glass to make sure you've got the highest quality glass. The sensor occupies the highest quality glass in the center. You kind of have to like waste lens in a way. Is why people get cranky about like moving back to 4x3. Truthfully, the best rectangular shape for a circular lens would be a square. Like
pretty much.
If you wanted to occupy the absolute best part of a lens, and not have like fringing and aberration as you creep out to the corners of a lens. You
have flat glass and everything.
So when we look at making the mechanism to control the aperture and also making sure that we've got the best possible lens clarity in the center of the lens for a sensor, it would make sense to me that they would be moving down in sensor size to minimize the physical impact of building a dual sensor device into the back of their phone. I really think it's likely that we're going to see them taking a step towards better software processing, computational photography tools, while then giving us some hardware features like that variable aperture. That to me, that's my hypothesis. That's what I think we're going to
There's
see
something
on
interesting in the
S9.
software side of things, and this is from VentureBeat's Evan Bloss here. So apparently, he was able to confirm that super slow-mo video capture, which is the 480 FPS at 720p capture, will trigger. It will actually trigger from any rapid movement detected in frame. Going to create a separate file? Is that going to, even as you're recording in 4K 60 FPS, like, is that going to be a separate thing? How's the ISP going to work on that? And it'll be interesting to see if we can get like subset video streams going on there.
That could be kind of cool, and also whether or not we see Samsung follow Apple on taking the transition over to HEVC. Because if we're working with insane frame rates, or also like 4K at 60 frames per second, and you don't want your phone to melt down in your hands processing and storing that quantity of video data, one of the best ways to help minimize the impact on storage is also just save less file. You use a better type of compression to archive your video. So there are a couple things like that that I
This is
think
going to
could
be
be
this is
really
going to be the
interesting.
start of AV1. That's the thing.
Right. Well, maybe, like, again, we've been seeing Google was reticent to jump on board when the world's third largest smartphone manufacturer switched over to HEVC. But when Huawei and Apple were in the space, suddenly HEVC works on YouTube. Gasp, shock. The other thing that I think could be really interesting is seeing Samsung follow in Huawei's footsteps for computational photography by utilizing the AI core that's going to be built into the 845. In the same way that Huawei has their NPU, that image recognition works surprisingly well. I don't know exactly what it's doing in terms of altering the settings on a camera and the post-processing on your photos, but when you point the Huawei Mate 10 Pro at an object, it's really good at identifying what that object is. If anyone can push that into a more consumer-friendly space, it's a company like Samsung. And if they have the hardware from Qualcomm to do it, and do it in a meaningful fashion, then that could also be a really exciting aspect for photography.
I think it will depend on where the service for that is based in, because if they want to, go all Bixby and stuff, like, it's great that they're able to do deep app integration, but I'm wondering if any kind of, if there's any like architectural problems that might come into that if they do have to roll that in somehow.
That's why I'm actually kind of positive on this turn. I'm wrapping up our Galaxy S8 after the buzz. We're a little late on that one, but you have Bixby in the camera app on the S8, and it's useless. I mean, it's there. I can find no reason to point a camera at something, have it scan what that thing might be, and then try and search the internet for similar looking images. Like, it's so cumbersome, so slow, and it doesn't provide me any specific benefit. Huawei's solution with a dedicated piece of machinery for on-device image recognition does give me a benefit in the auto mode, post-processing, and image acquisition. Like, it streamlines what you might want to do to make something look good based on millions of other images that Huawei has scanned. So if Bixby wants to take an evolutionary step up, I think the best way they could do it is emulating what Huawei and Leica have done with their NPU.
Well, I think you're right on that aspect. In terms of being able to wrap this around the whole device itself, what else? I mean, Bixby is going to get a bigger push overall. I mean, we saw it introduced last year. It's going to be bigger this year.
I hope so.
And the fingerprint sensor is moving to below the cameras, so
where it always should have been.
maybe, but
if an
still going to be
offset
like right up
asymmetrical
there.
fingerprint sensor was a good idea, then I think we'd see Samsung keep moving with it. But I think it's pretty clear the S8 and the Note 8 fingerprint sensors were just a reaction to other tech not being ready.
And maybe like a 0.5% increase in the screen to body ratio. I don't know. Yeah.
don't you think from the photos that have come out, like especially digging through the
It looks
renders and the
super
leaks,
much like the S8, just in general, and like
it
I would be
does.
able to like detect the whole like blurry stuff, renders. Like it still doesn't. There's no scale to it, and there's no real being
Right.
able to
Well,
tell
but
if
what
it's
I
like
was going to say though is especially with the way that renders are produced, the lines on the front face of the S8 look a little bit more, especially the side bezels look a little bit more like a V30. So that's also why I'm taking some of these designs with a grain of a huge grain of salt, because it's tough to get a handle on what a device like that's going to resemble until you can really physically hold it in your hand. But I
I
think
mean,
there's a huge benefit. Oh, so okay. From S7 to S8, we got this major change in display form factor. And that's what I think really made the S8 feel like something really fresh over the S7. But the actual operation of the phone, evolutionarily, not too big a departure from what we liked about the S7 and the S7 Edge. I think the S9 is going to feel very similar to the S8. It's going to have a lot of these little refinements, moving the fingerprint sensor to a more organic position, dual camera sensor on the larger S9. Um, but really, what I hope Samsung can get a grip on, and this is actually echoed, Peter Hayton using the PN Weekly hashtag. I really think they want to push AI, especially with Bixby around. There is a huge opportunity right now. Google Assistant, Google Home, it's not, Google isn't winning. There's competition in the space, and Bixby has been updated to do some really cool things with like connected home, IoT, and macros. But they're slow. The S8 Plus is really slow when you want to do something like you say, "Hey Bixby, open up Instagram and post a photo," and it chews up that request for a while before it spits out a result. I mean, in comparison to me just opening Instagram myself and posting a photo, Bixby is a bridge too far for waiting for my phone to recognize that. So for the future of AI, making more of this on device, making more of it local actually brings, in my opinion, could bring a security benefit too. So less of your queries are being sent up to a server to be analyzed for your voice print. Less of your data is actually migrating off the device. More of this content being recognized and acted upon on the device could be a really exciting step forward for security. That to me could be enough of a benefit over the S8 to say that the S9 could be a fresh new phone.
I mean, if it's on the device, you would more likely have to actually obtain the device itself
Exactly.
in order to get it. So yeah, that totally
And
makes
and
sense.
your usage, your phone learning about your usage isn't something that happens on some sort of cloud server basis, like some of the issues OnePlus is facing in collecting user data for these like improvement programs and then shipping it off into some Chinese cloud account. Your device should learn about you in the context of staying with you. And if that data stays localized, that to me is a big thumbs up. That to me is worth paying attention to what we're doing in machine learning right now.
Or at the very least, if it has to be sent encrypted properly, just like
Well, I mean, yeah,
none.
obviously, but we also know that so a number of companies have fallen down on that mission in properly protecting our data. So that's not a good look.
Yeah, yeah. All right. I feel like shutting this podcast down, but I
Yeah, I mean,
think we have
we
more
should
things.
just shut Pocketnow down, right? That's the
Let's try
trend.
no, yeah, that's.
Shut
I
it all
mean,
down.
Pocket Now's closing. Goodbye.
It's
No,
it's like it's like Dark City, the others, like shut it down, shut it all down.
the lights fade out and it's closing time. You hear Supersonic play a little bit. What? No, that's not. No, that's the totally wrong song. Um,
It's not the totally
but
wrong.
yeah,
You're the totally wrong song. No, what we're talking about, there's some interesting stories over the last week from companies that are leaving the tech space, tech companies that are shutting down early in 2018. I want to start this off. This one kind of took me by surprise because I thought in my brain it had already shut down. I was surprised to learn of it
all right. So
continuing to exist. This is
Beam.
was
This
it was
is
it
BEME. Beam. This
He.
was the app. Well, it was turned into an operation. It was transformed with the acquisition. But Casey Neistat started it in 2016. It was an app where you could. It was social video sharing in the way that Vine once wasn't. In that you had to hold your phone close to you, your like your chest, basically block the proximity sensor, and then you'd be in the moment, and you'd be like capturing all this stuff without having to think about what to shoot and whatnot. So
Oh, those
there's
hippies.
and yeah, and between that and it's somehow it got acquired by CNN. Somehow Casey Neistat was involved in that. He came over to them and with his co-founder for the app, worked on trying to get it into a daily news show, a 4-day a week kind of thing going on, based on crowdsourcing, based on panels they had. They had people just reacting to news stories, and or people who were involved in the local news stories, who were just living through it. They're shooting video and they're telling how they feel, and none of it really got anywhere in terms.
Well, I mean, so much so I did not know that it still existed. I thought it had already folded.
I mean, it's there. It was transformed from its original concept, but and it was starting to get there, but CNN lost money on the deal. It was a $25 million deal apparently, and and the digital operations were in a budget hole of like 20 million for the year as well. So that just having to write down that will just make sense.
That's gonna sting. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of that, Casey himself has said that he wasn't doing anything for CNN that was turning up anything of value, and he just felt he, it was just a failure on his part. But yeah, 22.
Yeah, it's also interesting in the thought of how they structured it, because I thought they pulled something that was sort of a wacky attempt at a new social video service. This aesthetic of like you hold the phone to your chest to record video so that you're still in the moment, kind of a thing, is a very esoteric idea behind interacting with media, and they tried to turn it into
Especially
sort
when
of a normal
he
news
himself
app.
has it. Yeah, especially when Casey, like this was back when Casey was still Casey, and it was like, okay,
Oh,
this is
Casey's still Casey. I think he's still doing fine.
oh yeah, totally. But when the Casey was more imbued into the app, and it
Right.
was like
No, no, no.
the
Oh, I see what you're saying there. Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, and it was like when he himself was already doing these things, doing having a big routine on his daily vlogs.
Right.
It's just
But
like
I think what sucked all the wind out of the sails is that CNN's attempt at this just felt like we want to buy Casey Neistat's sort of a tacit endorsement of a news platform. Not they
CNN is
really had any interest in what this service was trying to accomplish. While every single like local news agency now has their own news story sharing app. Like NBCLA, you can record video and use their app to send them a hot tip on a news story or something like
or
that.
just email the video for something like that.
Well, exactly.
No, yeah, I mean this was supposed to turn CNN into the hip new destination for kids to get their news from the cable news network. By the way, what's cable? I have this box over here that so
Yeah,
yeah.
from Renato Laporte using PN Weekly, the PN Weekly hashtag. Can't really understand the interest of CNN in the app, though. Traditional media is trying too hard to reinvent themselves, and it never works. And he's got a funny GIF of a newscaster sort of just like slinking from the frame.
Yeah, the BBC had their problems with automated cameras.
I can't wait until they get drones. Terror in the streets.
That's going to be great. Cheltenham's going to be really happy to see those drones up in the air.
I noticed you put our next story up there. I think you were doing it just to hurt my feelings and rub salt in wounds, because I was actually thinking of going back to revisit my Pebble. But we are getting word on the official support for Pebble ending in June. And then,
it is unofficial. It is official, but it's going to become unofficial.
That's right. officially unofficial with official support and developers trying to find back-end ways around Pebble's server side functions. But yeah, it looks like my beloved smartwatch, the best smartwatch ever made, is finally going to be dying the last death of the million paper cut deaths that it's been dying over the last 2 years.
Yeah, all the services, all the apps, all the things that rely on the internet are going to be gone. And yeah, it's just the Fitbit, not Fitbit, but Pebble OS, the base
Yeah.
stuff is going to still be there. So in terms of the best smartwatch ever made, going over to maybe the ugliest smartwatch ever made, will you take up its offer for $50 off the Ionic?
No, not at all. No hope, no chance. I'm gonna be cutting a little mini review. I might even just post it on Twitter. I might not even like post it up on YouTube. I'm cutting a mini review of the Honor Band 3, and it's a decent little fitness tracker. I don't think it quite stands up to some of the newer like Pebble or Samsung smart bands, but I want to watch. I want full notification support. I want good interaction for voice to text communication. So if I get a text message in on my wrist, I can reply with my voice to reply and not have to pull my phone out. I want good filtering for what notifications I get, and in a smart way that I can easily sort of customize that myself. And I also still want some of the fitness tracking, GPS support, and all day heart rate monitoring. And like the Ionic is going to give me great solutions for all of the fitness stuff, and it's going to be okay for some of the notification stuff, and that just kills it for me. My ultimate dream device would have been a Pebble Time with an all-day heart rate sensor on it, multiple days of battery life, great text-to-speech support, great notification support, great calendar support, and then if we could have just added, the ability to track heart rate, that would have been awesome. But I still have yet to find that all-in-one perfect unicorn smartwatch, and I probably never will.
Pebble Core was never going to be, so yeah, that's
I was so bummed about that.
sad. Yeah.
Bad.
And finally, Nintendo is giving the bye-bye treatment to Miitomo, its first mobile app, not really a game. It was just more of a place where people talk to each other with their Miis. If you had a Wii, then you had to create a Mii.
Right.
And that's going to be gone either May 5th or May 9th, differing dates on different pages. But it's good, around May is when we'll see this go away. And then, Nintendo can really start focusing on games like Fire Emblem and Super Mario and all that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't even try it. You fired this up, right? You were using
4 to 5 days. Steven Shink, who was back on our team, started the Pocketnow. Wait, did I or did Steven?
I don't remember. I just remember that we mentioned it at one point when I think when I first started doing the podcast, and I don't recall talking about it ever again.
Pretty much. It had its peak like within the first few weeks, 10 million users, and then it was more like 2.5, and ever since then, presumably, it's gone down. And they're doing their last hurrahs, doing their last campaigns. Hey, look at the question of the day, and everyone's just saying goodbye to each other, I guess.
Yeah. It's
just because it's not like a RPG or anything doesn't mean that there's still there can't be a gathering together of all the users and going to Stovacore and goodbye to everyone.
Nerd. Sorry, you threw me with Stovacore, because now I wanted to say something to you in Klingon. That it would be really funny, I think, from like a Black Mirror perspective, like if your Mii is currently in the app, when the app gets pulled, that your Mii is then trapped in their service forever. I think that could be kind of a fun way to add mortality to your digital avatar of what you do.
No, it's just going to be like they'll have a new Legend of Zelda game, and it's going to be replaced with a copy of Link.
Oh,
So
how great would that be, though? Is that like one of the side quests in the next Legend of Zelda game could be to rescue your Mii from the netherworld of having Mitomo close and like suck your Mii into the void of nothingness.
could be a good
You have
side
to
quest.
retrieve him.
Have you played any of the other Nintendo properties on mobile?
I have not. So I mean, you're talking like Super Mario Run and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not I fired up Super Mario Run when it first went live on iOS, and I think I played 2 runs and then put the phone down. And again, that was another app that I never picked up again. I didn't mess with Fire Emblem. I haven't done anything there.
Yeah, I mean, Super Mario, it was competent, but it was just another kind of, I mean, it was an evolved form of one of those um kind of just endless runners. But
Yeah, I was way more excited by like NES Classic, SNES Classic, and then I'm still debating. Like, I think I'm gonna throw some cash at a Switch. I'm not doing nearly as much gaming as I used to. But Switch is starting to really appeal for sort of a mobile modular idea of gaming, especially with Labo coming out. That looks like it could be kind of cool. And my daughter's a little too young for that yet, but I need to start paying attention to some of that stuff coming up so that, I can deliver fun educational techie things for her, get her really interested in STEM. And if Nintendo's going to be on board that conversation, I want to support it because Nintendo could do some really wacky fun stuff there.
I think I'm gonna go on eBay and pick up a Neo Geo Pocket Color.
Well, if you're there, shop me an Atari Lynx and we'll see if we can get our
All
retro
right,
in.
we'll be able. Yeah, we'll be able to do that. So on Pocket Now, the home for modern technology that is pocketable and not the old technology that wasn't. No, wait. Uh, uh,
Yep, true story.
uh, apparently, I'm off the internet.
Uh-oh, we might be losing Jules. So I should probably try and wrap this up. But this was all the news that was fit to print. Pocket Now for the last week of January. And I want to thank you all for joining us. Be on the lookout for some fun reviews coming up. I am revisiting the Galaxy S8 Plus. So this After the Buzz will be hitting the YouTubes this evening. I'm actually going to be rendering the video as soon as I jump off this podcast. Make sure you check out Jaime Rivera, the Pocket Now Daily, and you can also get your fix of Pocket Now in Spanish, es.pocketnow.com. And I'll personally also be playing with a couple cool little accessories coming up. I finally got my my Wacom bamboo stylus. This is a universal stylus for basically all smartphones and tablets, and I'm really irrationally excited to be giving this a run. There you have it, folks. Another episode of the Pocketnow Weekly has come and gone. The show is over, but the conversation continues on Twitter, where Jules is at Point Jules, and I'm humbly at Some Gadget Guy. Pocketnow is around the web on basically every social media platform, and our home site, pocketnow.com. So shows like this cannot exist without your support. Sharing the weekly with your friends who love mobile technology and dropping reviews anywhere you can review a podcast, because ultimately there wouldn't be a show if it weren't for our listeners and subscribers who have kept us on the air since 2012. The Pocketnow Weekly will be back next week with all kinds of delicious technology goodness, so make sure you tune back in. I don't know how to end this because Jules is in charge of the broadcast.